A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
All right, so we're gonna go right ahead and take a look at what is making the headlines today. What an eventful one it was yesterday. But take a look at how. Let's start with The Guardian. It's a direct quote from a comment which you might have heard. Look at that. Nigerians can't stand 2 more years of Buhari regime. Call for Buhari's impeachment, invitation to anarchy, says BMO. MBA backs Afe Babalola's Summit of Hope, says call not to topple Buhari. So the call rages, and security remains a big one, and it keeps people going back and forth. And then you see insecurity. Secession calls top agenda as 17 southern governors meet in Asaba today. So there you go. You know, several people have highlighted they just keep wondering. You haven't actually seen them meet. I mean, southern governors together that frequent. So now
Forever.
They have.
Well, once in like how many years now?
Well, this happens to be the latest one, and security. It's yesterday several people were talking about different things, and you just wonder, okay, without security, what can ever happen successfully? If your life is not secure, if there's threat to your safety, so that's topmost, basically.
Especially because it's very clear in the ground norm of the country that that's the number one job of any government. So
you see, take a look at the riders to that story at the bottom strip. Sanwo-Olu rallies Lagosians on security. CP raises the alarm of IPOB's threat to attack Lagos. Nnamdi Kanu, there is no such plan. Yoruba youths warn separatist groups against attacking Lagos, Southwest. So this happens to be one of those times. So you get all sorts of news making the rounds, and the veracity of those, you just wonder. But there you go. That's what you find on the front page of The Guardian today.
The Nigerian Tribune leads with the same security story, only this time it's at the very core. Security breach at Buhari's COS Aso Rock residence. That's the way the Nigerian Tribune puts it. Page 29 has it. Presidency confirms burglars made, quote, foolish attempt. Found the details on page 29 of the paper this morning. Right under the picture you see there on the front page, by the way, that's another story on its own. Bayelsa Councillor builds bridge for constituents with car allowance. Stories on page 17. And under that one, Lagos holds security summit, issues 12-point resolution. Stakeholders want government to take over abandoned buildings and vehicles. Government to phase out Okada to inaugurate last mile buses. That's what that one is supposed to be. Shanties, illegal structures to be demolished. Police closely monitoring Odua. IPOB agitators, that's according to the Commissioner of Police in the state. The details are all right there. NLC to ground Kaduna from May 16 over workers' sack. I thought that was over.
What was over? The strike?
No. I mean,
it hasn't begun.
Kaduna, come on, Chamberlain. I thought Kaduna State already had a conversation with the people with that response we had from the head of service and all of that.
But it appears you thought wrong.
Clearly, I thought wrong. Clearly. Right above the nameplate, Buhari should be removed if he can't guarantee security. Baba Ahmed, NEF spokesman, find that story on page 3. And you may be aware of this as well. COVID-19, security personnel to enforce use of face mask on public transport. That's right there. As FG reinstates restrictions on mass gathering, event centers, nightclubs to be closed, all government activities virtual.
Including FEC meeting?
All government activities, not government meetings. Whatever that means.
Is meeting not an activity?
The details are on page 3 of of the Nigerian Tribune. Chamberlain, the details are on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. You'll find that. Really? By the way, you can't go out at midnight. Curfew from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. every day.
No, sorry to disappoint you. I can't. Essential services are exempted. Sorry about that.
Are you an essential service?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Cause media is essential service.
Okay, you said you are not, so I take that first one. Okay. So, also this one, Oyo government promises to pay salaries, allowances of sacked LG chairmen and councillors. Stories on page 2. The details are on the inside pages. What's happening in Ghana? Buhari moves to resolve Ghana-Nigeria trade conflicts, sends delegation. That story is on page 6. And then you would wonder, the two presidents had met before. How come now? Well, the details on the inside pages. Learned expressions by Bolu Adegboro on the back page. Judicial financial autonomy, a way forward for the administration of justice in Nigeria, part 2.
Well, taking a look at Vanguard newspaper next. Odua, IPOB agitators on a watch list. Lagos CP says Okada riders, religious intolerance, top security threats. It's a plot to fuel division. Nnamdi Kanu. Police should avoid ethnic profiling. Yoruba groups. I don't believe IPOB can attack Lagos. Gani Adams. Sanwo-Olu malls total ban on Okada operations. So you have a lot playing out there about this commercial motorcycles, also known as Okada.
I think the latest.
They're already restricted in some areas
in
Lagos, but now with the planned introduction of
last mile buses,
it means that those are the areas. Maybe this might just be what the total. Maybe they'll just die a natural death. There are several people who've talked about the security threat that these does pose. Several images have circulated over time and still does about several concealments of Kalashnikovs in some of those compartments of those motorcycles, which is dangerously alarming. So who knows if this might have been part of the considerations for this one, but
certainly is. But I think
Oh, you're in the meeting?
No. I mean,
security
meeting. Somebody is a concern. You know very well. I mean, just as you have said,
that it was part of the
consideration. If those issues have been there and people conceal, dangerous weapons that shouldn't ever even been seen with them in my motorcycles, it's only sensible that one would think like that. But what's of concern to me is, there are many people will be affected who ordinarily wouldn't even ever go into that. It's the business for them is their, means of livelihood.
Just so that we'll let you know that the authorities in the state didn't say that was the reason why this is happening.
Well, there's a 12-point, security resolution.
And part of the reasons previously when this was introduced some years ago was because they looked at the figures and saw that the amount of accidents that were occurring based on all of those was horrific. It was, so they thought maybe attendant reasons. So could be several considerations really.
My consideration is just that let's just hope that we're able to carry along the people, the bike riders who are genuine.
I hope it's not a strategy.
Exactly.
Well, take a look at the image there. Security stakeholders town hall. So you have all of those personnel attending. Just beneath that lead story, Ohaneze fumes over army postings in southeast, south. So you also see that one there. Well, look, they've got several other stories making the front page here. Agreed pension contributors rise 353% in Q1 2021. You can check that out as well. Well, take a look at what is on the back page here. 2022 Super Falcons, Black Queens renew rivalry. Falconets, Flamingos, draw buys in World Cup qualifiers. They've got several others there. And Juve, Perlo, dead man walking. They've had a torrid time in the Italian League Serie A. But there you go. That's Vanguard today.
Nigerian News Direct has this one, and it's about the attempted robbery on the house or residence of the Chief of Staff to the President. Armed robbers attack Aso Villa. That's the way the paper puts it. It was a foolish attempt, says presidency, as bandits kill 10 worshippers in Katsina Mosque. Internal security. Security agencies must rise to crush bandits. Well, those stories you'll find on pages 3 and 21 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Well, Eid al-Fitr, just a quick one. Eid al-Fitr, FG declares Wednesday and Thursday public holidays as FRSC deploys 35,000 personnel. That story you'll find on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct today.
Take a look at New Telegraph. Insecurity. Impeach Buhari now. NEF tells NAS. Says Nigerians can't withstand 2 more years of ineptitude. That's a big one right there. And then just beneath that story, FGE reintroduces restrictions on mass gatherings as fears of COVID-19 third wave heightens. Imposes nationwide 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. curfew, shuts bars, recreational centers indefinitely. Passengers to pay $50 for tests at airports. Whoa. There you go. 1.41 trillion naira debt. Nigerian vessel owners turn scrap dealers. Blame NNPC ministry for cabotage failure. That's New Telegraph this morning. Okay, there you go. And that ends it with a look at the dailies today. Well, we'll be back in a moment to talk about this. Look at that. The restrictions, the fears about COVID. That's the big one this morning, so don't go away. Well, if you saw the news yesterday, the federal government the Ministry Task Team, the Presidential Task Team, did announce some new restrictions about COVID, and that did get a lot of questions coming through from that one as to the rationale behind it. Well, let's just talk briefly about that. We've got Dr. Alera Roberts, who is a consultant public health physician, joining us today. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well,
good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, when that announcement was made yesterday, there were several reactions and people checking through different things. But one of the quick, overriding questions or dominant questions was that, wait a minute, looking through the NCDC's COVID-19 releases, and you saw that the last one was just about 49 new cases, previously about 37 or thereabout, maybe about 12 additional cases. And then they wonder, well, is there a huge concern here? What could have informed this one? Because they say, look, compared to some other countries, it's a huge wave. But here, they just can't tend to relate with it. But perhaps medically, you can.
Well, yes, you're very correct. And it has been a cause for concern for us in the public health space for quite a few months, because we've been watching the rise in cases in India with what has been termed by all of us as fear and trepidation. There really is no big difference between India and Nigeria in terms of the people, in terms of the epidemiological profile, in terms of the development, in terms of our geographical location in the earth. So what informed or what caused that surge? And that surge is actually very frightening. And the only difference that we can see is that we've had a greater commitment to the public health interventions, probably because we recognized that our health system really could not cope with an overwhelming surge of cases at any time. That has been our primary concern. That has been what the federal and the state governments have been, working very hard to keep up. And the one thing that was causing concern again, you will notice, is that this was after India in about December, January, almost practically declared themselves COVID-free. Then what happened? They lifted the mandate of mask wearing. They started their mass gatherings. They didn't roll out vaccines, despite the fact that they are the world, probably the world's largest producer of vaccines. They didn't roll it out nationally. They had election rallies going on. They had huge religious festivals going on, and then boom, we saw these cases rising and rising and rising. I mean, a daily case rate of 400,000 new cases. It was incredible. So, it only serves a responsible administration will only look inwards quickly and say, hold on a minute, what do we need to keep doing to ensure we do not go that same way? I mean, people have to remember, India was the medical tourist capital of the world. If anybody had a health system that should have been able to cope, one would have imagined it to have been India. So, where will we be if we have an upsurge in cases? Where will we be? We've shut down emergency isolation centers around the state in Lagos. We really cannot afford to have even the slightest uptick in cases, particularly with what the other things we're dealing with in country.
No, but Dr. Roberts, there are those who, because it's important that the citizenry are on the same page with the health authorities on this one, because they have to work together to get the kind of results that we all need. But right now, there are those who are struggling to piece these together, because when they look at the efforts that are being made, different states, they tend to see some sort of inconsistency. To them, this appears to be out of the blues, because they say some of those health facilities, they seem to have shut down, drastically scaled down preparations or activities for COVID cases. They appear to have moved on. Enforcement of this social distancing and masks appear to have waned. And then comes this announcement when they thought, so how do they reconcile this announcement with the level of preparation or consistency in different states? Because this may be a challenge to enforce, or the awareness for it to hit people. It might be a challenge, don't you think?
It is a challenge to enforce. We've faced that challenge since the beginning of this emergency response. I mean, ever since March last year, when we started the first lockdowns and we had huge public pushback, and we started all kinds of risk communication strategies to get people to understand. The truth of the matter is that because it appeared that COVID was not going the way it went in the US, UK, Europe, and other countries, people became complacent about it. And the truth of the matter is, all that the NCDC and the PTF have come out and said is that they are not lifting the sanctions. We rolled back ever so slightly, allowing for intra and interstate travel and international travel with protocols. But you will find that we never lifted the mandate on mask wearing. We never lifted the mandate on large mass gatherings. And perhaps you could say that, well, authorities may have turned a blind eye somewhat to allow some kind of normalcy to return. But now what they are saying is that, hey, we really have to enforce these protocols again. Because if you read the statement, it says that, for instance, the curfew continues. It was never lifted. I know people were breaking it, but it was never really lifted, and that curfew continues to stop it, because the biggest super spreaders are the social mass gatherings. The social mass gatherings are the places where people become completely complacent. The use of alcohol and things, just diminishes people's inhibitions. Masks come off. You're eating, you're drinking, you're speaking into each other's faces because the music is so loud. These are the natural, and this is what becomes the super spreader events, in truth. Even in the transport stations, people don't stay in a particular place for any length of time. But I think it's important that the public understands that, look, let us just maintain our less than 50 new cases a day and continue to try and bring it down to zero, and make sure we don't allow cases to come into the country recklessly. We have nothing else that we can do. This is all we can do. This is all we can do, and we just have to just do it.
The restrictions, the new announcement just made, doesn't particularly mention schools. where, of course, you know that there are always gatherings and all, and it will seem like schools are getting back to normalcy incrementally. Do you think this might have any impact on schools, the way schools are operated now, whether in the public or private? Add to that, gathering in buses. How will that enforcement that government announced be carried out?
Actually, it does mention schools. Schools are to continue what they've been doing, because we have noticed that since schools reopened, we didn't see an upsurge of cases. There were a few schools that had a few outbreaks of COVID, but those outbreaks were very easily managed because they're young people, I guess. We didn't see overwhelming symptoms or anything like that. And once the school remained within a bubble, the infection was very easily controlled. So schools are important. Schooling is absolutely essential for everybody. So schools will continue the way they are doing it. A lot of schools are doing, well, not a lot of schools, but a few of the schools that are doing blended learning. Certainly at the tertiary institutions, we're still doing a lot of blended learning. Hostels haven't been allowed to resume. Students haven't been allowed to come back into hostel. So the school issue, if we're talking about it as a source of infection, has remained controlled. So there's really no extra cause for concern there, so long as they continue to do what they've been doing to date. Now, the issue of mass transportation is a huge one, because the mass transporters will tell you that they would spend more money and not make any profit if they were to operate at 50% capacity. But certainly everybody can themselves, this is where it comes to us taking individual plus collective responsibility. If you don't need to go anywhere, then don't. The government has already said that, grade levels 12 and below should continue to work from home or stay at home and just do. So that minimizes a lot of the transportation. I know the transporters are going to have a hard time trying to, make funds and all that. But the truth of the matter is, if people die and die recklessly, they will still not make any money. And that's something that we have to. So that enforcement in the mass transportation sector is going to be needed, and at least getting them to 50% occupancy and everybody wearing a mask, that should help to reduce transmission.
One more thing, but what about, are we also taking into cognizance the fact that people are getting vaccinated now? So how does that affect all of this attention and preparations and notices that were put in? It still appears as though we're not factoring that in fully, are we?
Well, darling, to be truthful, 3.92 million doses of the vaccine is 1.96 million Nigerians vaccinated. Hardly a drop in the ocean. So unless we can get more vaccinations into the country, I am seeing, and I think a lot of us can testify, that we're seeing a lot more willingness to be vaccinated than we've seen previously. But then that's because as Nigerians, we're very used to an immunization schedule. We're used to doing it for our young ones, and we saw what it did for us for the polio. But where are we getting the vaccines from? I mean, we need to get a whole lot more vaccines in country. At least, if I did the math right the other day, I think we were trying to do it, at least another, 56 million doses need to come in country, or another 56 million Nigerians need to be fully vaccinated for us to say that we are on the road to preventing an upsurge of cases. That's not going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately, if India continues to post the numbers it's posting.
All right then, Dr. Alero Roberts, consultant public health physician and senior lecturer, College of Medicine, University of Lagos. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, then we're back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, so moving on now from that health concern to security matters. And you may have seen several dailies, different groups talking about impeachment or not. Well, I guess in addition to several other matters, our guest will respond to some of those. Makwe, good morning.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Indeed, we're talking about a different kind of security now, because yes, it's very closely related to your welfare. After we've looked at health security, then we have to come to a security that has to do with guns and maybe resolution, as the governor of Katsina State was talking about there. But let's quickly introduce our guest. Dr. Olu Agoloye is the acting national chairman of the SDP, that's the Social Democratic Party. He's a former Minister of Power and also former Minister of State for Defense. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. And we also have with us Major General Cecil Esekaigwe, who is a retired Army officer. General, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm sure that you have been watching the news and you have seen, well, in recent times, it was seen that we have seen some successes, even though, yes, there have been also causes for concern in many areas of the country, but only recently we saw some success in Edo State, where some kidnapped victims were successfully freed. We also saw some arrests made in Ondo State through the help of Amotekun, the outfit. I don't want to say regional now, because the governor keeps saying it's not a regional security outfit. Each state has its own, but it will seem that it's limited to the southwest region. And so we have seen a few areas of progress here, and then we also see the initiative of the Katsina State government, as if to say that, you know, they also perceive that it is some sort of conflict that could be resulting in this sort of crisis that we have seen in the state as well. I don't know what your thoughts are with these solutions that we see states proffer to the current security challenge facing us. Let me start with you, General.
Thank you, Mark. Well, it's a good development, but it has to be founded on proper planning and not on ad hoc basis. You know, security is not a thing you just come overnight and start to profess solutions. And that is why you see you must address those things that, you know, make insecurity exist in the first case. When you talk of poverty, when you talk of unemployment, when you talk of a state of anomie, they're coming out overnight to say, I have made some resolutions about how people can live, you know, in community without stress. It's just, you know, for me, it's a facade. There must have to be a deliberate planning, and you have to address those conditions that are conducive to this security.
What are your thoughts, though? I mean, have you been able to do an assessment, I mean, from the perspective, from your knowledge as a security, I won't say expert now, because when you get to the level of a general in the Nigerian Army, it was expected that you have gone through a certain level of training and, of course, even examinations to get to that level. So, from your own assessment and your understanding, and of course, from privileged information that you might have you been able to make sense of where we are with regards to security in the country?
We're in a perilous situation. It's a very precarious thing. As a matter of fact, we are into, you know, a national apocalypse. We are not even sure, you know, whether, you know, we are going to get out of the woods. For me, it is a very frightening dimension. And, you know, I'm happy that we have a new set of service chiefs. I think the solution is a proper reset. There has to be a proper reset of our security calculations. Do we have the manpower? Do we have the equipment? You know, and the fundamental issues, you know, that, you know, make insecurity thrive have to be addressed. But for a very long time, we have been leveraging on the hard power. That is the military strategy. But we don't know that soft power is also very important. That is winning the battle of heart and mind. And a situation where, you know, the citizenry are now more, you know, disposed to the bandits, it becomes very, very frightening. We must be very, very strategic in winning the battle of heart and mind to make sure that those things that make insecurity thrive are addressed and addressed holistically. It is a deliberate thing. It's not an ad hoc thing.
I don't know, Dr. Agoloye, what are your thoughts on the current security situation, you know, going around the country? You decided to run for governor of Ondo State, if I'm correct. I don't know if you're happy with the measures taken so far by the current governor of the state to try and combat insecurity.
Well, thank you. What we need to look at, as was said by the general, is to look beyond what we're seeing. The situation in Ondo and the southwest is peculiar. And then The two governors that I'm familiar with, the Ondo governor and the Oyo governor, have taken what I consider the best moves to tackle this issue. But they have not done enough. But the real question is, are we doing the correct thing? Are we applying a good solution too late? What we can say we know at the moment is what I call, there's a consensus, there's a corroboration of on what is happening, and that this is very frightening. Okay, and when you hear a soldier use that word, it's not that I am afraid. Okay, it's that this situation is just bad, and it calls for big concerns that you need to go much deeper to find out what really happened. What can we now do? And my own position, which is also the position of my own party, is that government of Nigeria had gone too wrong for too long a time. And really now we have a crisis on our hands, and the crisis is not just that headsmen, terrorists are coming, internal crises that people are raising against each other. These are deeply rooted in the negligence, the neglect, the mismanagement, the corruption, and the absence of addressing a demand side economy, if you want to put it. Okay, the set of roads and water supply that we had when we were 70 million people is still what we have when we are 200 million people. And more children have dropped out, and there's so many reasons for this, and we think that we need to look at those core reasons, and our position is that while you are looking for maybe matter of the moment solution, double the number of men, put soldiers here and there, and so on, you have to look at the fabric, the foundation of where we went wrong and how we got here.
I mean, the words that General used, I think he said we're approaching a national apocalypse. Anytime people hear that word, apocalypse, Armageddon, they don't spell, they spell doom, so to speak. And you talked about a mismanagement, I think, if I heard you correctly. And he also made reference, and that's General, made reference to the fact that we have depended too heavily on hard power, and that we haven't leveraged sufficiently on soft power. Now, internally, I mean, there have been wranglings, even though we see oftentimes that parties are trying to come together to say what faces us is existential, and this is not the time to play politics. However, there are other people who think, no, this is actually the time to, to say what's wrong politically, if things are wrong politically, because you talked about a mismanagement. I do not know what your thoughts are with those saying, well, let's come together to address what is going on politically, and those who say, no, the president should be impeached for ineptitude.
Well, they are probably both right and both wrong. If you look at the structure of Nigeria, the president is the man. The buck stops on his desk. And then we are worried in case there is what we call complicity. Okay? The problems that will arise from complicity, the problems are less than those that will arise from incompetence. Okay? So there are two ways to look at it. That the presidency had found itself overwhelmed because of poor leadership and because of incompetent leadership. Okay? But again, this can be corrected. This can be corrected.
Incompetent leadership can be corrected?
It can be corrected. You could let me make the point because it's comparison. But if we are faced with case of deliberate action, if we are faced with a case of complicity, okay, then we are in serious trouble. So you then find your father, so to say, looks like a stupid man, but it's deliberate. You then say, look, the roof is leaking. He said, okay, I call the plumber will come. And if it is deliberate, there's problem in the house. Okay? The president says, I appeal to you to stop this. The situation in southeast or southwest is very unfortunate, very sad. If you attack all these stations, who will protect us? This shows or sounds like this is not a man supposed to do the work. This is not a man who is the president. The president goes to act. But when president is appealing and is observing, something is wrong. If it is incompetence, then now we have good hope. But if it is complicity, then we are in very, very serious problem. We have had continuous deniers from the same government. They behave as if nothing is going wrong. Okay? If it is denial based on they do not understand, or they have not thought properly on it, or they are just incompetent, okay, or they are just corrupt, then we can try to look for how to come together and solve it. But if it's based on complicity, then they are leading us to somewhere which we do not quite know, and we are coming to them to say, how do we not get there? And that is even more frightening.
By complicity, you mean a thorough awareness of what the situation is, what the problem is, and maybe a willingness to do nothing about it?
Not exactly. That could be bordering on incompetence. A deliberate action to allow things to go in a particular way, okay, to soften the ground for another action that will come in, okay? A deliberate action to allow things to degenerate deliberately, not because we don't know what to do, but we allow it. It's a situation where you allow infiltrators to penetrate into the system, and it's deliberate, okay? But what we think is that, well, let's leave this issue of being deliberate or so alone, and then now provide solution.
Because some people say that feeds into the conspiracy theories that have been making the rounds.
The conspiracy theory is not the same thing as I'm talking about, but it's part of it. You go and do conspiracy theory when you are in the dark, or when you have a different motive, or when you are just partisan, okay? But we're talking about what happens within government itself, within the leadership of government itself, within those who are supposed to protect us. Imagine something. This may show you what we mean. By the Constitution of Nigeria, the man that is called president has only two duties by law, okay? Not by choice, not that if I like, I'll do it. By law, one, to protect the citizens, to guarantee their security. Second, their welfare, okay? None of this had been done properly. And we have now found ourselves in a situation that the kidnapping, all those ones we are seeing, they are just some outcomes and effects, symptoms of the real damage that's been going on, okay? And we then said to them, look, we don't want to be part of conspiracy theory, so we hope and expect that all this is not complicity, all this is not deliberate, and if they are not, government, you have not done correctly, okay? So let us look for a method that will not abuse government or provoke government, okay? And we be open for them to see a non-partisan solution. And we then say, look, you have to stop all these approaches and the processes that have been going on and turn to the people, okay? Go for people-centered approach, because we're here for the people, and the people, like somebody said, cannot sleep with their eyes closed, or they don't know what's going to happen to them next, okay? Let us go to matters of social justice that promotes people-centered participation.
A very lengthy submission there, but General, let me throw this to you now. You have talked about how we shouldn't focus on hard power alone. However, in the deployment of hard power, which it is what this terrorists and bandits have, deployed to great advantage of theirs. I mean, they have stricken fear in the hearts of many Nigerians. People are afraid to travel on the roads and go about their legitimate business. Do you think that, one, we have deployed hard power in a way that sufficiently sends a message to terrorists that, look, we are in charge? That's one. Even if we were to soften the ground for what we might consider soft power. That's, the second part of the question. The second is, among security agencies, we have seen warnings, because there have been talks around, there have been ploys to overthrow the president. I think we heard that from the presidency. We heard a kite being flown by, a senior advocate asking for a coup d'etat. We saw a statement from the Ministry of Defense saying that no soldier should even contemplate it. This is against our laws. We've seen talks around those kind of conversations that we ought not to be hearing in a democracy, all and simply because of the security situation prevailing at this time. But do you think that while we're trying to handle the soft part, have we deployed hard power sufficiently to send a message home to the bandits?
Well, those stories of let's don't plan a coup or impeachment or no impeachment, for me they are just hyperboles, noise making. Globally,
why should we not take them lightly?
Let me tell you, globally, military regime is no longer sustainable. Globally, so anybody that is attempting to plan a coup in Nigeria now is just wasting his time, because we actually fare better in the military under a democratic setup, unlike in the military setup, because under democracy you can agitate, for better funding without facing any undue consequence. But in military regime, there are a lot of limitations, it. So I think it's not about call for impeachment we should reset and know where our problems are, where our problems started. You talk about whether we have appropriately deployed or send a signal, from the high power sector. You see, to actually contain insurgency, it's not a question of showmanship. It's not a question of a campaign. You have to make deliberate efforts. And I started by saying, do we have enough manpower? And I followed up by asking, what of the appropriate platforms, equipment? 3, what of the morale of the troops? It got to a point in the past when, people were in the military saying that you need prayers. How can you say you need prayers to control the insurgency? Faith without good word amounts to nothing. So you cannot lose grip of a situation and call for prayers. First and foremost, unfortunately, counterinsurgency, asymmetric warfare, was a development that we were not planned for over the years. But when it came and faced us squarely, we needed to address them the way they are. Because you cannot use the training of a conventional warfare to tackle, asymmetric warfare like this, counter-insurgency and all that.
General, before now, I mean, a lot of Nigerians who admit to you that before now we had made progress. It's not difficult. It's so much so that the government of the day told us that Boko Haram had been defeated. At some point it was redefined to say technically defeated, but it was defeated. And it was seen that the attacks and strikes by Boko Haram insurgents was on the down low. But in recent times we have seen a resurgence. It would seem that we celebrated too early. Even though we were told initially that was the pangs we saw was the pangs of a dying monster or something to that effect. But in recent times it has now become full-blown. We've seen banditry in the northwest of the country trailing into the north central, and then we see kidnappings and all manner of crimes in the southwest, and then we see secession bid in the southeast, and all of these things are, I don't know, they seem to feed one into another. What went wrong with the procedures which we adopted in the northeast of the country, that it would seem that it has now regenerated and resurged into what we're now seeing all over the country?
You see, there is a problem of strategic communication. Insurgency, counter-insurgency is a protracted phenomenon. First of all, we got caught up with given, ultimatum. We must defeat Boko Haram in the next 3 months. That's not realistic. Two, the terminologies came from nowhere, technically defeated, degraded, and all that. So you must be very, very conscious. You must devise a strategic communication. Because when you give an ultimatum and you are not able to achieve it, it's a boost for the insurgents. When you mislead the public with terminologies that are not really what they are, you give a boost to the insurgents. See, I also will endorse that the people that speak on military operations who are not in the military should leave the business of strategic communication to the military. By the time a spokesman or a special advisor to the president or minister of information is giving a brief on military operation, you are sending the wrong signal because you are not equipped for it. So when you tell me...
What if that's their own reading of what the military is saying?
What did the military say? The military has never said that they are going to, the battle will be over tomorrow. No, the military have been doing their best within steps. But that's why I'm saying that the military strategic communication will be able to put in proper perspective what they are doing, where they are not doing well, and what they should do. But let me tell you, the military will not come out openly to say this is the situation where some of these things are called need to know. If you were to go to Ministry of Defense and see the way they interact when they are having their meetings, you'll see that they lay bare in those meetings, this is our shortcoming, this is what we need to do, and this is what we require to do it.
General, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts for us. We're going to go on break. We're back shortly. Please stay with us. Yes, we still have our guest with us here, Dr. Olu Agunloye, who is the acting national chairman of the SDP, a former minister of power and steel, and also a former minister of state for defense. And we also have with us Major General Cecil Eseka-Igwe, who is a retired army officer. We're going to take the conversation now to Lagos, where my colleagues have questions for the guests.
Oh, yes, indeed. Let me ask you, General. I mean, sometimes it appears as though we gloss over certain narratives or reports of division, even within the army. Now, when we hear those kind of reports, what kind of attention should we be paying to that?
Well, first and foremost, when we were off the screen, I was just telling Mark about the need for the media, to have first-hand information in a battle appreciation, because you see, you are supposed to be embedded in the front line. When you are embedded in the front line, you are able to appreciate the situation rather than relying, on so many narratives. But the truth is, you also have avenues of verifying these narratives that are being thrown up here and there. You cannot lie for a long time. The lie may work for 1 or 2 days, but the third day, the truth continues to emerge. But what I should, really advise is that when informations are churned out, there are better ways to verify those informations. But what I would recommend is that the media should be embedded in the front line so that they will have first-class, assessment of situation rather than relying on narratives.
Recommendation that you proffered after you left the service, or did it equally occur to you during the service? I'm asking because, is it something that the authorities have considered at any point in time?
A very good question. When I was the Principal General Staff Officer to the Minister of Defense, we actually, organized, this embedment strategy for journalists in Jaji, where, we actually took a few of them out, and I don't know whether they sustained it or not, but this was a strategy that we actually thought of, and we actually executed it to a very large extent.
Because it appears to have just died a natural death, and because these days, so many things classified as top secret, press releases, journalists are not even allowed to ask questions, and yet they want us all to be on the same page with the authorities. So one wonders, do you think that perhaps at the highest level, there should be a massive rethinking of how these things happen? And even when that happens, they need to determine the safety of those journalists, because when you see reports of maybe friendly fire, not once, not twice now, so those are equally huge concerns that need to be addressed if journalists have got to be embedded.
Yes, I understand your concern, but don't forget that in war situations, there are a lot of issues that crop up. But this incident you just described is not an everyday phenomenon, but maybe once in a while. Journalists and military men, they have, some, similarities with the nobility of their profession. So if you are embedded in the front line, and if anything happens, it's just that it's bound to happen, but not because you are not protected. When they bring that strategy up and it becomes a policy, there will be appropriate, strategies to also protect journalists. When I mean that you are going to be in the front line, doesn't mean that you are going to be, where you can easily be, a target of the insurgents or the enemies. So there are strategic ways of protecting journalists when they're embedded in frontline operations.
Dr. Agunle, I don't know if you share the same opinion on that matter, embedding journalists, and essentially saying embedding civilians in the front line.
Well, I was just wondering why we have lapses like this, because the president of Nigeria is a military general. He had been a military governor in the past. He had been a military president in the past. So really he must know all of this. So why are these lapses? There are lapses in every sector, okay? Even here, when he said embedding journalists, it need not be Shemalin that we go to war front. There will be soldiers who are professional, who will then now be covering on the field, and they will be protected. They will be, but they will know what to do, and they will know how to act in the war front. So this is a standard ways of getting this done. So what is very much of concern to me, why are these things not being done? Why are lapses in every sector, everywhere? Okay? Are these lapses deliberate? Why are deniers in every area? That's a little bit disturbing for me.
Well, when you say there are lapses everywhere, you also just right now talked about the fact that maybe there is some grand plan somewhere Isn't that supposed to be the job of the DSS or someone to know that these things are happening? Prevention, detection, and checking of such activities?
In normal circumstances, yes. But in complicity, no. Okay? So, well, like I said, we will behave on what we can see and hope that there is no complicity. So that way we can look at the areas of lapses and then now provide a non-partisan solution, which in my mind and which in the principles and ideology of our party is asking government, stop this decadent and despotic approach to things, stop all these deniers, and adopt a people-centered social justice set of principles.
Well, let me ask General Sekagbe that same question which you just raised. And the thing is that we know the Nigerian army. They've excelled in different parts of the world when they go on missions. And even in this country, we know their capacity. So that's why people ask, there seems to be something missing. I mean, we're led by one who's been at the highest level in the military. So when you look at all of this, people can't just help but ask, it seems as if there's something playing out here that's been deliberate, don't you think?
Well, there are missing gaps, but they may not be deliberate. The issue there is that when we made our exploits in various peace support operations, when we were going there, we had platforms, we had the equipment, we have the manpower, to do those things. I remember in Liberia and Sierra Leone, we have enough troops, even more than the contributing nations. When we have gaps in operations like this, you see there are ways, to demand accountability. First and foremost is through the National Assembly. They have various committees on defense, army, navy, and all that. But the thing is, you must be informed yourself to be able to interrogate somebody. Otherwise, like it's known, when Obama relieved the general of his duties, he said, military subordination to civil authority is a value they cherish so much. But when you are not well informed, you are not able to interrogate a military personnel, you call him to your place and you ask him frivolous questions. All you need to do is to just refer you to say, look, what is you are asking me? I know things that happen under my watch. So, but when you are well informed, before he comes to you, you know the appropriate questions to ask to demand accountability. But when there is that lacuna, they just come in and make it a jamboree. They come in and they come out. So, if there are lapses because there is no demand for accountability, as it is supposed to be. Because if I am called to defend my actions, I am going there to defend my actions by telling you that is asking me that question, you have not given me the equipment I need to do my job. If you give it to me today, you will see an improvement in what I'm doing. So these are the gaps that need to be, settled when people are informed, when the people that are going to ask the military questions also are informed, they know where the lapses are, and they're able to ask questions to block those leakages.
We see the alacrity with which security agencies address perhaps protesters or approach protesters or those who plan to protest in the country. For instance, today's dailies, they are making comments about Odua, IPOB, even though those groups say, look, there's no such thing. But we don't see the same verve with kidnappers, killer herdsmen, even though the president has given that directive. So could those lapses be part of what has led us to all of these things happening, which ordinarily they should be answering questions to?
Well, sometimes there is this misnomer which must be corrected right on. It is really not the business of the military for internal security operations. And that is where we must connect, that gap. For instance, the police, the Nigerian Police Force, is the lead agency for internal security operations. But when they are overwhelmed because of lack of capacity by maybe manpower deficiency, lack of equipment, the military is called in up and down to come and do the job that they are not primarily their functions. And I can tell you, out of the 36 states, their military presence is almost about 33 or 34 doing internal security operations, which is not supposed to be, their area of concern. Otherwise, it's supposed to be at best, supportive of the Nigerian Police Force. So, if you don't block that gap, the military will just be overstretching themselves, and when you need to call them for where they matter most, you not have, the best, because the manpower they are supposed to use in doing their core duties have been overstretched by, doing internal security operations. But again, if you really want the military to succeed in internal security operations, you must declare a state of emergency in those areas. You cannot have the military operate, to curb these excesses when there is no declaration of emergency. Declaration of emergency will enable them, to avoid some certain rules and regulations that shouldn't be in place if you really want to do a clinical operation. So that's why you see some people are calling for a state of emergency. But sometimes people also misconstrue the real meaning of what the intentions of those who are looking for it for. People are concerned about, where would the governors be, or where would the State House of Assembly be, and all that. There must be a deliberate planning at that level to be able to connect these gaps.
Are we there yet, General? Are we at the point of calling for a state of emergency yet?
That is a decision of, it's a political decision. I will not be privy to that, but there have been calls for that. And I think in the reset that we are talking about, it may not be ruled out.
Okay, let me ask you this, General. There are concerns. You have raised some very vital concerns now, especially about the intervention or the use of the military in at least 33 to 34 states of the Federation, as you have said. But, the concern, a number of people are wondering is, how come we seem to be ignoring the police in all of these? Some will ask you that, there are perhaps some structural problems with the police that need to be addressed. For instance, we are kitting up the railways now. The railway command, I don't know if they are as active as they ought to be. Some are saying, do they even have the kind of facilities they need to get this job done? Helicopters and stuff like that. They don't even have a viable maintenance departments for their vehicles and for anything that the state governments provide for them. Don't you think that we are ignoring the police in all of these? And what is it in meeting of the gaps that you talked about? What are the things that we need to do if the police is to even stand up to their responsibilities?
Well, I think the government has realized that, and I think very recently they set up police trust fund and issues like that. So let us see where they take it from, because my idea is that with such a trust fund, they will have enough resources, to beef up their strength, to be able to acquire the appropriate platform, communications, and all that, to be able to do their duties. But again, you see, sometimes the police have, I'm a very big supporter of the Nigerian Police Force, and I know their limitations. But sometimes there's what they call self-inflicted injuries. And I would think the new IG will withdraw policemen from politicians, will withdraw policemen from those who have enough policemen guiding them, so that the police will have, enough manpower to do their jobs. So the government should set up, private security firm and maybe give them licenses to provide some weapons, so that they will be the VIP guard. A situation where you see a politician with 30 policemen, where do you want the policemen to get the manpower to do their job? And if you see some ceremonies, you go to some ceremonies in all parts of the country, you see over 50 policemen guiding some people who are not even supposed to have policemen as guards. So let them pull all of them out and build their strength so that they will be able to take their core responsibility of internal security and let the military alone to do their own job, you know, which is their primary core responsibility, protecting and defending the territorial integrity of our country.
We do not know why this conversation seems to come up every single time, because we see that almost every time we didn't hear it when this new acting Inspector General of Police was appointed. But usually when we hear a new Inspector General of Police, one of the first things he wants to do is withdraw security personnel or police personnel from VIPs. Oftentimes you only hear it in word, we don't really see it in practice. Maybe it happens, but maybe we just don't see it. Just wondering though, what do you make of the constant alarms we get from security agencies? Just before we came back from the break, we played the track of the Minister of Interior warning of imminent attacks on security facilities and holding correctional facilities. I don't know, what are these alarms supposed to do for us? Do you have any thoughts on that, General?
Well, I think it was during the decoration of one of his officers who has just been appointed. It was just telling him, giving him marching orders on what he should do. You know, there are certain things that are so imminent and how we should address them. But for me, I would have thought that, you know, having risen to that rank, you got appointed to that very sensitive post. The knowledge you have acquired over the years are clearly spelled out from the experiences you acquired. So coming out openly actually to give that marching order to him is like, you know, for me it's overblowing the issue. And when you raise that alarm, what do you expect, you know, the citizens to feel? Oh, if we are just telling a new man that appointed that has spent over these years telling him how to do his job, then that means we are really in a big problem. That means the man is not even really equipped to do the job. But sometimes when you decorate an officer, when you want to give marching orders or, you know, that level, you actually ask, you know, the pressman to go out and it become an in-house thing, so that you will let him know that from my own table, from what I have seen from a vantage point, these are issues that you need to focus on. But it's not a thing of, you know, bullying it up and that will alarm the public.
Well, General, some people might disagree with you. Yes, maybe he saw it as an opportunity to let the media know what is going on, because very rarely do we get any interviews or explanations from the Minister of Interior or even any minister that has to do with security these days. But let me ask your take on it, Dr. Agnoye, because we've also seen warnings from the DSS talking about how they're going to arrest fomenters of violence, and yes, they know the sponsors. We see all those types of warnings and sometimes threats, and nothing comes out of it. I don't know, maybe something does come out of it. Maybe you have some privileged information.
Not only that we have warnings, we actually have cases where prisons were attacked and people were let out of prison. We have cases where security outfits were attacked. But let me quickly put something. I like when the general said hard power, soft power. Okay, I like that he was right. Okay, so in this particular case, I need to go a little bit down. Security is one leg of development. The other leg, there are three legs. The other leg is politics. The third leg is economy. And the one that tends to drive it, to drive this tripod, is the politics. So when the politics fails, it starts to attack the economy. As the economy continues to fail, it brings out repercussions on security. So really, my take is one leg of it is hard power, So let the people go to, let them go to implement whatever they need to do for hard power, okay? But the solution comes from the politics. The solution comes from the politics. We need to repair.
Let me get your thoughts again. Pardon me there.
Yes.
When we made reference to the constant warnings by the DSS and the talks of, we think that there are some people who are trying to foment trouble, what do you expect to see shortly afterwards? Do you expect to see arrests? Should these arrests be made public, for instance? Because sometimes we hear that these things are political. For instance, take Imo State, where the governor of the state kept on talking about how politicians were the ones involved and trying to ensure that that he didn't have peace in the state. And looking at the level of violence which you saw there, what were your thoughts on that?
What I'm saying is the level of crisis that we saw or we are seeing is a result of malfunctioning political atmosphere in the system. When the politics goes wrong, every other thing will follow. When the politics goes wrong, there will be repression because there will be no justice, and there will be no justice, there will be no peace, okay? And that's what we are seeing.
So you are not ruling out the politics? You're not ruling out politics from this, or politicians from this?
Well, they use politics in two ways. When we do something that is wrong, they say it's playing politics. When we do something that is not okay, they say it's politics, okay? But the question is, politics will allow us to make things work well and to correct things. And that is what we need to do. And that's why we are saying that now to correct these things, government, ruling party, and so on must stop this denial, and they must start to admit reality, okay? And they must understand that the entire basis has to change, okay? The entire basis has to change, and that is why we believe that the National Assembly and all the lawmakers of Nigeria must now have to assume a new role. People say that they are not well chosen, they are not okay, and so on, but that's what we have at the moment.
Do you think that it is possible that this is even politics at all?
That what?
Do you think that it is possible that it is politics? I mean, when you hear talks of, this is political, I don't know, as a politician, do you think that we could get to the level of violence that we're seeing by the, by the words and actions of politicians?
Yes, that is correct, but because things have gone wrong in the system, so everybody has taken law to his own hands, and law and order have broken down. And we see that in Nigeria at different levels. Herdsmen, terrorists from other parts of the country, from other parts of the sub-region coming to Nigeria. Then we also see that within ourselves, there are agitations because people want self-determination, because these things are not okay for them. And nobody is doing anything, and the system continues to break down. And then you find that even when you talk about kidnapping, it is not herdsmen alone that kidnap. People do kidnapping among themselves just to raise funds. And please understand that government over the last 20 years, for instance, had not done anything to project for 200 million people in their education, in their health, in their transportation. Nothing has been done. And we said, look, National Assembly must go back to play a new role. Otherwise, Nigeria is dead. Mm-hmm. Lawmakers in the country must play a new role, okay? Otherwise, everything is dead. Then people must admit when we are in a situation like this, we have to sit down and talk. To imagine that we can go to do national conference the way we had done it 3-4 times that failed may not work anymore. I may not even have enough time to do that. So lawmakers of Nigeria who represent the people of Nigeria must go back to the drawing board, know that they are related and responsible to the people, and allow us to have what we call a strategic national discourse, so that we can determine how to redo the politics and politicking of Nigeria.
Well, I will take General's thoughts on that when we come back from this, because he's also got into politics now. What will the General have to say on that aspect of politics when we come back from this break? Please stay with us. Well, my guests are still here with us, and we're talking about, the threats and warnings that we normally get. I don't know, Dr. Agunloye was saying something about how politicians need to do better. We have to have more room for discussions and what have you. And I know that, General, you have since gone into politics. I don't know what you were hoping to find when you went into politics, but when you hear of the fact that politicians, I don't know if it's a fact now, because these are things that we hear, politicians being behind some level of violence that we have witnessed in recent times. What are your thoughts on the level or the kinds of politics that we're playing today, and what can be done to remedy it?
Number one, the voters have to be properly educated to let them know the power behind their voters card. And two, you have to de-emphasize money politics. Three, you must hold people accountable. For instance, all those talks and toggery. Have you ever really seen anybody that has been prosecuted? You really have to deal with those people to let them know that toggery, all this looting and burning of voting materials and all that, have consequence. By holding them to account for it, you prosecute them and jail them. But once you pick one of them, they have godfathers who are using them. They are the first to go to the station to get them released. So it becomes a vicious circle of, if you have the money, you can always get whatever you want. By the time the electorate get matured and they know the power behind that voter's card, they're able to say, we are tired of giving us rice, salt, and money every season. The next 4 years we will not see you. Why will you not see the politician? Because he has spent so much to acquire that power. He believes it is time to recoup his investment. Until we begin to say, look, whether you give me money or not, I know who I'm going to vote for. Because this man has a track record of helping the people. He has a track record of development. First and foremost, the permanent question to ask any politicians that is coming to canvass or vote is, show me your house in the village.
Why?
If you don't have a house in the village, how do you want to come and collect vote from those villagers? You have to show that you are with the people by showing your presence in your village. You don't come from nowhere when you don't even have a 3-bedroom in your village and say you want to be a House of Rep member that has so many of those villages around. There are so much gaps. We must let politicians know that money has limitation in politics. You can collect somebody's money and still vote your conscience.
So my thoughts are, electoral violence we can understand. We've seen that over the years. It's not strange to us. However, this level of killings and arson and what have you that we've witnessed in recent times, where you hear that politicians are behind it. In fact, at some point, we even heard that politicians were behind fomenting the trouble of Boko Haram in the northeast at some point. And some people were saying, hey, how is it possible that people will play politics to the lives of people in order to just get political power? From your understanding, from your own experience now as a politician, have you seen that level of desperation amongst politicians?
I have seen a lot of desperation amongst politicians. And it's not a thing that will end today or tomorrow.
Why is it so difficult to call them out? Why is it so difficult to name names when we hear politicians are behind it, politicians are behind it? Why is it so difficult if we're sure that these are the kinds of people we have as politicians? Why is it so difficult to name them?
I think very instructive. The federal government has just said they are going to shame and name and shame those who are in support of the Boko Haram and their campaign. So that would be the beginning, of some of these things. And if the federal government does it, I mean, everybody will know that, yes, the die is cast. So if you do this, they are going to expose you.
Why is it taking so long? I mean, we as a people, we have suffered, I don't know, we've suffered for such a long time. We've lost lives. Economy has been destabilized in many areas. People have been displaced. In the Northeast, at least 2 million people have been displaced. Over 50,000 people are thereabouts have been killed. I was saying, oh, we will soon name, and we don't have the names as we speak.
You see, let's take it as a process and not a program. And I'm very, very sure that very soon they will be named and shamed.
Dr. Agoloye, you chuckle.
Well, there are two politics, and I will take this opportunity to quickly point this out. Politics has two meanings, at least in Africa. I'm sure maybe in the world. The politics that I was referring to is governance, how people come together to determine how to govern themselves, okay? The act of involving government and governance, okay? The other definition of politics is the one that we're talking about, the lapses that have now become the dominant factor in politics, okay? So if I do something extraordinary, okay, shameful, okay, unheard of, something completely devoid of integrity and credibility, they wave it off. They say, that is politics. That is politics for you, okay? But what we are saying that how did we get here? This same kind of desperation that we have in politicians looking for power is the same thing as we have in young people at the moment looking for money. If you see what human beings do to get money, it's completely unbelievable, okay? Things have gone wrong.
We have no
and
problem.
They have gone wrong, not today, since 1914, when Lord Lugard put in that amalgamation, we had an error there. In 1966, when the military came and overtook Constitution of Nigeria, there's a wrong there. In the 28 years of military in governance in Nigeria, that is wrong there. In the last 22 years, when we have been doing democracy and we have mismanaged things, that is wrong there. So what we say that, what do we do? At this moment, there's crisis everywhere. It's no point describing it. Everybody, you feel it one way or the other.
Dr. Kule, sorry
so
to interrupt your thoughts. You have said...
Go back to the basics.
You have said...
That is what we are asking.
Indeed. Going back to the people. Going back to the basics, but
go back to the
we
people.
need to be honest.
Get the National Assembly, okay, across Nigeria.
Dr. Kule, if I may come in...
play a new role. And part of that role would be to insist that there is accountability for judiciary. There is accountability for the leadership of Nigeria.
If I may come in, I mean, because you have said that, you know, the desperation you're seeing or we're seeing on the part of politicians wanting power by all means, it's the same level of desperation we're seeing on the part of young people who want money by all means.
Good.
The difference is that we have had no qualms shaming young people. I mean, in recent times, we saw the NSAS protests, for instance, which was demanding accountability on the part of the police for harassing endlessly young people who were seen with laptops. This was all in the process of trying to stop cyber fraud, 419 and all manner of things. On a daily basis, we're regaled with tales of, you know, people who ritualist murders or murderers, so to speak, people who have gone into all manner of things. We see them on television, but very rarely do we see any politician exposed for doing something that was wrong, something that exposes exposes he to a level of depravity and desperation in trying to get power. Why is it that these people are shielded in favor of, or in contrast to young people who are on a daily exposed for wanting or having the same desperation as the same politicians have?
Because they're the ones doing it. You know, when you talk about exposing, you're waiting for them to name Boko Haram sponsors. I laughed. Because these are people who are talking at the Boko Haram sponsors. This situation is stupid, okay? And it's bordering on complicity. And anywhere people collectively do evil, they must cover their tracks. They cover themselves.
No, but
and this has been known.
Dr. Gule, you know, we have to be more specific here. The reason I say this, we have to be more specific. When the PDP was in power, you know, there was a lot of talk around, oh, it is the politicians who are causing this insecurity, and that's the reason why we are still witnessing it. There's an uptick in insecurity. Okay, so the PDP was booted out of power, the APC got in, and then initially it was seen that they started on the right footing, and then now this is where we are in terms of what we're seeing all over the country. And they are now in turn saying, oh, politicians too are in charge of this. Can we really, when you said they are the ones doing it, who are the ones doing it? Is it the APC politicians or the PDP politicians or the SDP politicians? Why is it so difficult to name them?
Well, because there's no difference between the APC and the PDP. And then the system, the fabric of the system is faulty. And when that is faulty, you won't see much different from what we're seeing now. And they will not be able to attack the problem, they will not be able to expose themselves, and they will continue to do the same way. And when you complain, they repress you. When you agitate, they put power on you. So that system has to change. And that is what we are saying.
General, you agree? There's no difference between the APC and the PDP?
Yeah, well, there are differences in the names. PDP, APC.
Struggle there. It's a difficult one for you to answer now.
No, it's not difficult. Just that, you know, in a situation where the coming together as politicians or in the political party are not ideologically defined, you find it difficult to actually really say, just this is what this party stands for and all that. The people, if you see how my party, APC, was formed, you know that you have people from New PDP, you have people from CPC, ANPP, and so on and so forth. So, and you see the mass... ACN. And you see the mass defections from PDP to APC, from APC to PDP. That just shows you clearly that there is no ideology and it's a question of where. So that's why he's saying that.
And I can appreciate your difficulty, General, because this last elections in Edo State, I mean, the candidates of the PDP became the candidates of the APC, and then
APC
the candidates of the
PDP.
APC.
So,
I mean, it's really so is that the reason why we cannot be honest in tackling the security situations that confront us? Because oftentimes when you hear certain briefings, you have to ask, are the citizens being taken for a ride?
Well, it's very unfortunate. When I entered politics, a lot of my friends who know me very well question my sense of judgment. Why I should go into politics? And I asked why. You know, a lot of them told me that if you don't know how to lie, politics is not for you. If you don't know how to, mismanage funds, politics is not for you. If you don't know how to call black white and white black, politics is not for you. But it's very wrong. And I said, no, I know who I am.
It is the bad politics they're talking about.
So then somebody said, oh, they made General the DG of a campaign. He's not a politician. Then you ask, who is a politician? I read political science, my first degree. And in fact, military actually started politicking.
So how did your knowledge of political science, being in the military, so to speak, and then coming back as, you know, as a retired military general, how did it affect how you ran your campaign, say in Edo State?
Yeah, if you remember, before the election in Edo State, there was also prediction of chaos. There were going to be mass killings. There are going to be, you know, so much people that would die, you know, and all that. But when I was inaugurated, I told them that this campaign is going to be issue-based. By my background, I don't know how to insult anybody. I will not insult the opposition. I would rather put up the programs of my party and let people decide. So, as a matter of fact, we held so many consultations. In my Edo Central local government area where I come from, the PDP and APC leaders actually had a meeting. We call it a peace parley. That look, we will not want to lose anybody in this election. And in so many other places, people saw the reason why, you know, people should not die, you know, carelessly because of election. So, from my point of view, and they knew that, you know, as a retired military officer, I know what violence is, and I know the boundary of violence. So I let people know that don't start what you cannot finish. So at the end of the day, we had, I think that was one of the, you know, very few peaceful elections we have had in recent times. It's what you give as messaging. Messaging is very key.
Well, I mean, people also say that perhaps the role of the traditional institution in Edo State cannot be overemphasized, because it was seen that there's a great deal of respect for the traditional institution, and when the Oba waded into the matter, it was seen that all parties and even candidates and, you know, their followers had to respect the agreement that had been reached in the presence of the Oba. How great an influence do you think traditional institutions also wield in political settings?
The Oba of Benin, you know, played a very strategic key role in ensuring peace. Even before he did it, you know, publicly, he also did a lot of consultation with them privately on the need not to turn Edo State into a battleground. So, traditional rulers have a great role to play in stabilizing a tense political environment. And again, you also have to find out the respect that traditional ruler enjoys among his community. There are so many communities that do not have respect for their traditional rulers, maybe because of the roles they have played in the past. As a matter of fact, a true traditional ruler should not be partisan. Should not take side in politicking. So you should look at all of them as your children. So if you are able to, you know, project that and people see that in you, of course they will respect you.
So moving forward, I mean, Dr. Agunloye has talked about how we need to go back to the basics. And right now, we're still in a very shaky, precarious position. While we go back to the basics, or while we're asking to go back to the basics, people have to feel safe doing it. People have to feel safe in trying to start all over again. What are your thoughts if you were to advise, and I don't know if you know they're going to be listening right now, but if you've noticed certain gaps, what are the gaps that you think need to be addressed urgently between our security agencies, those in power on the other hand, and the citizenry? Well,
first and foremost, let me take the citizenry, which is key to everything. Whether you're in military, whether you're in government, you have to be a citizen of Nigeria to be wherever you are. The citizens' right must be respected. The social contract with the citizens must be respected. Like I said at the beginning, the welfare and security of your citizen is the primary purpose of government. And once the citizens have faith in government, when they have faith in their institutions, they are able to behave like true citizens that they're supposed to be. Then, for the military, my constituency, I will tell them to continue to do their best, but the most important thing to do now is to reset. Reset on our doctrine, reset on our training, reset on our capacity building, and reset, you know, on the definition of who our enemies are. Then, for the at the political level, in the military, what we were taught is that the intention of the commander-in-chief becomes the mission of the armed forces. So there must be a total reconciliation of the mission of the political leadership and that of the military. So when we do that, I think we will properly start what we call the reset button.
Well, I don't know, Plan B was trending yesterday. So an offshoot of a sermon that was being given by a pastor. I don't know if you, heard about it. Urging Nigerians to have a Plan B, or his congregation to have a Plan B. I don't know if you want to have anything to say to young people who are leaving this country in droves now, looking for greener pastures. Do you think that
that is for solution?
Yes. Just quickly, in about 30 seconds.
We think that looking for solution had to be done on 3 planes. The first one is the short term. Something must happen almost immediately, okay? And then among things that could happen immediately will be to reinforce the hard force, okay? To also develop it in a way that they rely more on technology and equipment, okay? And then now, part of the immediate things that must happen is some levels of restructuring. State policing, state police, we are running into anarchy and we must prevent it, okay? Some of these short-term solutions can be done with executive order, can be done by the lawmakers making appropriate laws, okay? And because we do not have time for a big meeting at the moment, so powers must also devolve, okay? There will be devolution of power, and there must be, to go along with it, to get people engaged, to get younger people engaged, there must be a quick reform of the local government.
Dr. Agunoye, I'm afraid I'll have to say we have to leave it there because we're totally out of time. Gentlemen, I have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning and sharing your thoughts as candidly as you could. Thank you. Dr. Olu Agunoye is the acting national chairman of the SDP, that's the Social Democratic Party, a former Minister of Power and Steel, and also a former Minister of State for Defense. And we have also been speaking with Major General Cecil Eseka-Igwe, who is a retired Army officer, but now in politics. That's how we leave it for this segment. Thank you so much for staying with us. Don't go away yet, because I'm sure that we'll still have your comments. Please stay tuned.
All right, let's take a look at some of the feedback coming through from you. We've got this first one from Iro, who's talking about insecurity in the country. Well, Iro says, we're facing a rise in insecurity that is largely caused by unemployment of many youths. FG is now shutting down businesses or business premises again in regards to COVID-19 prevention measures, meaning workers will be dropped again.
Reminds me of the strategic communication that General mentioned earlier. Professor Nakina says the twin problem of unemployment, lack of programs to cushion the effects of economic hardship in the midst of plenty, is crippling the citizenry. It's time to invest in human capacity development, diversify the economy, and fix the shenanigans behind power insufficiency.
Well, Comrade Francis Osedume, talking about cabinet insecurity, says the ways out of insecurity is to have men and women who are of integrity man the leadership of the security agencies. We must revamp our leadership recruitment criteria and stick to them religiously. We must solve unemployment. It guarantees a safe society.
Deboali, I hope I got that right, says the general has said it all. We need to win the soft battle. The place of education and community engagement can never be downplayed. A nation that refuses to train her citizens is at war with her future, and that is where we are.
Ainayan also says those who have refused to fix Nigeria and those who refused to speak up because of what they gain from government, unfortunately, will be the highest losers if Nigeria goes to war.
And Boma, talking about COVID-19 protocols being restated, said Dr. Alera Roberts is on point. Now is the most dangerous time in curbing the pandemic. We've been lucky so far, and some of us are beginning to have a superhuman complex. Best to up and maintain guidelines at least till the end of the year.
Well, economists and medical people will always be at loggerheads because the economy needs to function while you see how you can maintain what? Safe
life and livelihood.
Distance as well. All right, there you go. Well, that is the show today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain.
Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Malkwe Ogun Yusuf. Thank you for sending your comments. Do have a lovely day.